Welcome to Green Dot Daily. I'm Maria Marino. We're live every weekday at 3 Eastern on the Action app. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. Coming up, NHL trade deadline moves and a pick from Nick Martin. We'll also talk men's college hoops with Stuckey and Mike Calabrese. Stay tuned for a women's pick from yours truly as well. But we start with player props. And one game in particular we're highlighting is number 5, Arizona and UCLA. 61% of bets and 56% of the handle is coming in on Arizona -9. But some big money is on the UCLA money line. Only 3% of bets, but 76% of the handle. As we bring in a fan favorite, our director of predictive analytics, Sean Koerner. How are we doing today?
Just happy it's no longer National Toast Day. I can't believe I was betting that day. That was my bad.
Yes, that's okay. We accept your apology. Not sure if we have any key holidays we need to be aware of today, but what's your first prop you want to give out?
Yeah, so my first prop today is Dylan Andrews of UCLA to go under 2.5 rebounds. You can get at even money right now, but he's a point guard who can accidentally end up with 3 to 4 rebounds at times, but he's typically going to stay under this number. And this is just a really tough spot for him in terms of rebounds because Arizona's an excellent shooting team. They rely on taking a lot more shots closer to the rim. They don't take many threes. They're very good at getting to the line. So Andrews is going to be less likely to be involved in those rebound chances as they arise. And Arizona is just also an elite rebounding team. They rank top 15 in both offensive rebound percentage for and against. And based on our metrics, where we weigh in strength of schedule and things like that, they're the second best rebounding team in the nation. So we're projecting Andrews closer to 2 rebounds with about a 65% chance he stays under 2.5.
Sounds good to me. I saw that he was averaging 2.2 on the season. Went under this as well 3 of the last 4 games. So not too shabby. What's your next pick?
Yeah, so the next one's Yaxel Lenenborg of UAB to get more than 9.5 rebounds at -140. Some books have it at 10.5. I still like that over at -115 as well. But he's cleared this in 8 of 10 games. I mean, this is a market he thrives in, but this is especially a great matchup for him. And I'm projecting to see more rebound chances than usual tonight. So this is a plus matchup. Temple is one of the worst shooting teams in the country. And they don't really turn the ball over much, and they get to the free throw line at a below average rate. So that's just going to mean, a ton of field goal attempts, ton of bricks, potentially tonight. So there's going to be even more rebound potential for Lenenborg tonight. Like I said, I like the over basically any number that's out there right now because I'm projecting him closer to 12 rebounds. So over 10.5, I have that about a 62% chance. But like I said, I like taking the over 9.5 at -140 because that about a 73% chance to clear 9.5, about 11% chance he ends with 10 exactly. So I think it's key to get the 9.5 if possible. I think the extra 25 cents are well worth it. But again, I also like the over 10.5 as well.
Yes, averaging 13.6 on the season. Pretty crazy. Rooting for a lot of bricks in that game. But I'm told you have an NBA pick for us as well, a little bonus.
Yep. I'm going with Drew Holiday of the Celtics to go under 4.5 assists. You can get it at +105 right now. This is one that isn't for the faint of heart. He's cleared this in 8 of the last 10 games. He's been crushing it. However, the Celtics, they've averaged 124 points a game over that stretch, and their team total is closer to 110 tonight against the Nuggets. It's a tougher matchup. So there's going to be fewer assists to go around in general. But a trend I noticed with Holiday is, his pass rate has actually gone way down recently over the past 5 games. His pass rate on the season's 1.25 passes per minute. The past 5 games is all the way down to 1 pass per minute. Derek White has seen an increase in pass rate and potential assist rate. So he's been more of a distributor than Holiday recently. But Holiday has banked on his teammates making 90% of his potential assists. It's just 60% on the season, so I'd expect him to regress towards that. So if this trend holds true, where his passing rate's down, his potential assist rate is down, once his teammates shooting percentage come back down to earth, his assist rate will drop as well. So that's why I'm projecting this actually closer to 3.9 assists with about a 62% chance to stay under. So the fact that we're getting plus odds here is a nice bonus.
Let me get this straight. You said his teammates are making 90% out of the potential assists that he's dishing out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, potential assists are kind of subjective. So
Okay.
sometimes it could be kind of funky. But yeah, they've made 90% of his potential assists over the
That's
last 5 games.
wild. It just goes to
Yeah.
show like what a smart playmaker he is. And I'm glad you put this on my radar because I didn't realize that Drew Holiday was like dishing the ball so much and at such a successful rate. But
Well, that's the thing.
as you said,
He's not dishing it much. That's the thing. They're just
right,
making
you're
it.
right. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
the results are
Yeah.
there. But that's why you said this is not for the faint of heart. But listen, the key is you're not going to be going and making toast tonight as you were thinking of
Absolutely
last
not.
week.
No.
We're out on it. National Toast Day. We are out on it. But Sean Koerner, thanks so much as always for the tips.
Thanks for having me.
I like the Zags here. Short road out. They're playing their best basketball of the season. And St. Mary's, couple injuries that they've been able to overcome. I think the loss of Jefferson will show up here. And St. Mary's, they're on a roll. They're 8-0 in their last 8. They're playing well. But over those 8 games, they've shot 44% from 3. Not sustainable.
The Bulldogs can go ahead and lock up a top 2 finish. They've finished in the top 2 of the WCC every year since 1996. So just, an impressive tip of the cap to what Mark Few has been able to do in Spokane.
All right. That was Stuckey and Mike Calabrese with the correct read last week on BBOC. And they're joining us now. So as the West Coast Conference tourney tips off tonight, I'll ask you this, Stuck. Who's more built for March, Gonzaga or St. Mary's?
I think it's Gonzaga right now. This Gonzaga team's peaking at the right time. They had some injuries earlier in the season. They had to adjust, find their identity. And I think people overreacted a bit, but this team's peaking at the right time. It feels like everyone has their roles and responsibilities. Meanwhile, St. Mary's, they were peaking about, a couple weeks ago. Team was on fire, but then they had a couple injuries, most importantly to Jefferson, who they're just going to miss him, I think, on both ends of the floor, but specifically his athleticism on the defensive end. So they're not fully healthy now. You saw the impact of his loss against Gonzaga when Gonzaga really handled them from start to finish last weekend. So I think this Gonzaga team actually has more upside than St. Mary's right now. St. Mary's going to grind you down, and they're going to be in some ugly games. They could lose to anybody. They're going to be in some ugly, 1-2 possession games in the tournament on the first weekend. I think Gonzaga's offense has much higher upside. So I'll say Gonzaga.
Mike, where do you stand on this?
I'm going to make the case for the Gales just because I still don't trust Gonzaga's backcourt. Nolan Hickman has padded his stats in WCC play, but against St. Mary's in the 2 games, he went 5 for 19 and scored just 11 points. So I think in March, you have to have something out of your shooting guard, and he just hasn't been there against the better teams that they played this season. And then St. Mary's, Stuck hit the nail on the head. When they're healthy, they're one of the best defensive teams in the entire country. They're down Jefferson. He's out for the season with that knee. But if they get Wessels back, he's been in a sling. He's had an arm injury for the past 2 weeks. I still think there's enough time between now and their first round game of the big dance for him to get healthy. And if he comes back, I think that brings back into play what they do best, which is keeping teams off of the offensive glass. They're first in the country in defensive rebounding percentage, and he's a big part of that. And they also have Aiden Mahaney, who's a capable star. He gave, the Zags 20 in Spokane. He dropped 25 on New Mexico. I trust Randy Bennett as a head coach. He's got 9 trips to the big dance and 5 wins in those trips. So I think even though they were playing at a higher level with Jefferson in the lineup, I think they can use this tournament, in conference play to build a little bit of momentum going into the big dance. And because of their defense and the fact that they play at a different speed, I think matchup dependent, they could get hot again and win 3 or 4 games.
Fair enough. Well, we're going to keep jumping around here a bit, but we also have Arch Madness, or the Missouri Valley Conference tournament, starting today. So, Stuckey, who do you like better, Indiana State or Drake?
I think it's close. You could argue either way here, but I'm going to go with the best offense. And the guy, he has a ton of nicknames, but I like Steph Blurry. And I just think that they have the best offense. They have the best offensive playbook. And for what it's worth, during league play, they were number 1 in offensive and defensive adjusted efficiency. So I'm going to go with the Sycamores of Indiana State. This is an offense that I don't think anyone wants to see. I hope they get into the dance. It's one of those teams, I talked about this on our podcast this week. If you have a lot of these mid-majors or low majors, they're super reliant on one player. Throw out a team like Weber State, for example, and Dylan Jones. Those teams, it becomes easier to scout those teams, right? It's like, all right, we just have to shut down this one player. But when there's teams that have balance on offense with a great offensive playbook, as Indiana State does, those are the teams that are dangerous, that can make a run. So it's close. I think Mike's going to make an argument for Drake, which I can see, but I'm going to trust the best offense and Larry Blurred to get it done.
Larry Blurred. Oh my God. I'm just making a mental note for myself to Google Steph Blurry highlights after this, but Mike.
You may want to type into Google Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as well. There's one more nickname for him. Stuck brings up the offense. Let's talk offense. Since February 1st, Torvik ranks Drake as the 35th best offense in America compared to Indiana State at 75th. So Drake is coming on here late. And when you look at their overall resume, they had more quality wins than just about the entire their Missouri Valley Conference combined. They have 2. The remaining 11 teams just have 3. They whipped Akron by 20. They beat Nevada by 19, and they split with Indiana State. And in their loss to the Sycamores, they were tied in the final minute. So they were on the cusp of a season sweep. Like, that would totally change the narrative on Drake versus Indiana State if they had held on and won that game. But when I look at, the best player between these two schools, you can make an argument for Robbie Avila and all the great nicknames, and I'm not going to throw any cold water on that. But I want to bring to the forefront Tucker DeVries. Evan Maya rates him as the 14th best mid-major player in the whole country, but other metrics like team rankings and their game score metric have him rated as the 15th best player in the entire country, and he's gone thermonuclear down the stretch. He's averaging 32-9 in his last 3 games heading into Arch Madness. I think this is a team to back at this point, and I understand that some people may be leery. Both Stuck and I had them against Miami last year in the tournament, and he went ice cold. So I understand that there's a little bit of that bias from last year's failure in March. I think that they get it right this time, and they win at least 1 and maybe get to the second weekend.
Okay, so not 1, but 2 players you guys are putting on my radar that I need to know about. We did see last night, huge win over South Carolina for Tennessee. These picks were given out on GDD, by the way. So that was a nice win. But Auburn, another contender in the SEC, who's poised for a deeper tournament run in the big dance, Auburn or Tennessee, Stuckey?
It's Tennessee. Mike's going to make a case for Auburn, which is ludicrous. You just mentioned Tennessee's win over South Carolina. Over the past week, they've won at South Carolina, at Alabama. That's 2 more road wins over tournament teams than Auburn has all season. What's Auburn's best win away from home? UNC Asheville on a neutral court? I don't even know. Ole Miss, maybe? They haven't beat a tournament team away from home. They lost that at App State. Tennessee won at Kentucky, at South Carolina, at Alabama. Teams peaking at the right time. They figured out their defense. They're so versatile. They can, you can go defensive lineups without Connect. Connect can come in and just microwave teams. This team has, I think, top 4 upside. Like, they could be the 3rd best team in the country, you could argue. I think they're better than Purdue. I look, Houston has a bunch of injuries. UConn, I think, is a bit better, but I like Tennessee. The Auburn guards just aren't there. I don't trust the Auburn guards away from home. It's Tennessee, who beat Auburn, by the way, I think a week ago. Tennessee's peaking at the right time, more versatile, one of the best players in the country, and one of the best defenses, especially in the half court. It's Tennessee.
The rebuttal?
So Trump had a big Super Tuesday. I'm going to take a page out of his book. It's time to give Tennessee's head coach a catchy nickname. How about One Trick Rick? Because he's a one-trick pony. He dominates the regular season. He's averaged 24 wins across the last 7 years. Come tournament time, he's 6-5. He hasn't won a game in the second weekend of March Madness since before the iPhone was released. He had a golden opportunity last year against FAU, blows it, loses by 7. Year before that, he's a 3 seed. He loses to an 11 seed in the second round. They also got sniped by a 3 seed in Loyola during their magical run to the Final Four. He gets outcoached over and over and over again in March. Whereas I have Bruce Pearl, who's 17-12 lifetime in the Big Dance. He took UW Milwaukee to the Sweet 16. He was on the cusp of getting Auburn to the national title game in 2019. He's just a better tournament coach. And I understand the limitations on Auburn from their backcourt, but I still think that they have a very high floor when you look at what they do on the offensive glass, what they do defensively. Chad Baker-Mazara has really come on. I know that he's not a pure guard. He's more of a wing. But if they get anything from their three-point shooters, the sky's the limit for this team. I think they could be a sleeper to make the Final Four. They just need to get a little bit lucky, have some positive shooting regression, and I think that they'll do it. But I'm just not going to back Rick Barnes. The guy is just a born loser when it comes to March Madness, and it's been 15 straight years of it.
We heard that, by the way, if you, luckily Calabrese wasn't on shows back then, but I have a tape. It's an audio. It's on my phone, so I can't really play it here, but it's Calabrese saying the same thing about Bill Self before Bill Self won it with all his.
Oh my
He was
goodness.
also saying it about Jay Wright. So he was saying this.
I mean,
Jay
it probably
Wright
wasn't
before
on
Jay
your
Wright
iPhone
became
because the footage wouldn't go that far back for Barnes. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. I get that's
Tony Bennett. I have clips of him saying this about Tony Bennett.
How
many
opportunities are we going to give Rick Barnes before we say the guy just wilts under pressure? He can't game plan because the second game of the tournament comes up and he just throws his hands in the air. So many talented Tennessee teams flame out. I agree, Dalton Knecht is a superstar, but to borrow your point from mid-major land, you shut down one player on Tennessee, all of a sudden it's a different assignment. If he doesn't play like a 25-plus, 30-plus point per game scorer during their run, I think they're susceptible, particularly after that first.
Your brilliant coach, Bruce Pearl, he had a game plan, just shut down Knecht, and they gave up 95 and lost. So, I mean, it's that easy to game plan, and Pearl can't figure it out. Auburn might be in trouble in the dance.
Well.
I guess we're going to find out.
Things are getting interesting here. I didn't realize the relationship history between you both ran so deep, but the good thing is Stuckey keeps receipts. We keep receipts on this show. So as you said, we shall see. But Stuckey, Calabrese, thanks so much.
Thanks, Maria.
If you've ever wanted to try the best version of the Action app, that time is now because we're running a special offer on Action Pro. To celebrate the start of the NCAA tournament, you can try Pro Access for just $9.99 for the first month. With Action Pro, you get our biggest betting model edges, real-time money percentages, data-driven systems, NCAA tournament player prop projections from the predictive analytics team of Sean Koerner and Nick Giffen, and so much more. Just visit actionnetwork.com/madness to take advantage before this deal expires. That's actionnetwork.com/madness. Something else to look out for in college hoops this week. You can actually bet on women's conference tournaments now. You have to look around. I found odds at Caesars, but keep in mind you can only bet when the games aren't going on. But my favorite play is actually Iowa to win the Big Ten tournament. I know, groundbreaking, but they are at plus money, and I think that number is only going to go in the opposite direction. So I want to get it now. And the reason I like this is just looking at the other contenders in the field, they're a little bit vulnerable right now. I'm going to just preface this all by saying that Iowa isn't necessarily the best team in this tournament. They notably lost to Ohio State earlier this year and Indiana. Iowa is in a tougher part of the bracket because they will have to likely go through Indiana, but their best player, Mackenzie Holmes, is day-to-day with a knee injury. And then on the other side, when Iowa lost to Ohio State, again, on the road, it took overtime and a career-high 33 points from Cody McMahon in order for Ohio State to get this win. Iowa did get some redemption on their home floor, even with an inefficient for Caitlin Clark, and Molly Davis going out with an injury. They were still able to win because they figured out how to contain McMahon, held her to just 10 points. I also feel like this site being in Minneapolis, it's the closest in proximity to Iowa. And we know that Caitlin Clark fans are just everywhere anyway. They travel well. I think a neutral site favors the Hawkeyes. Finally, this would be the third straight Big Ten tournament win for Iowa. A season ago, they demolished Ohio State in the title game. So that revenge factor does give me a little bit of fear. However, I also think On the flip side, the experience is going to bode well for Caitlin Clark and this Iowa team. They've done it before. They can do it again. Up next, Jay Money has a pick for tonight's Celtics Nuggets game via the Buckets podcast.
Give me the Boston Celtics in the first half money line. Let's hope that Jaylen Brown plays. So the Celtics are 10th. So they obviously coming off a loss. They're coming off a game where they blew a 22-point lead in the fourth quarter to the Cavs. They're coming off a loss. They've only lost back-to-back games so far, only once all season, and that was back early November as well. So this is when the season first started as well. But if you're looking at the Celtics coming off a loss in the first half, this team is 10-2 straight up in the first half, coming off a loss, and 10-1 in their last 11 games coming off a loss as well. This is what they do. They bounce back off of losses, and they're actually 11-1 straight up this year. Only one time they've lost back-to-back games, 11-1 straight up after a loss. So I think this is a Celtics type of spot. This is a bounce back J spot paired with the revenge game J spot as well after losing to the Nuggets at home. Remember, they were undefeated at the house. I believe had won like 22 straight games at home, and then the Nuggets came in there motivated into their house and ended their streak and beat them by 2 points. I think that they can match up well with the Nuggets. I think that they could be a very well balanced team offensively and defensively. These guys are locking up on defense as well. That's why they've been so different this year. Adding Drew Holiday and Porzingis has just been crazy for the Celtics, pairing that with Derek White, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum. So I'm hoping Jaylen Brown plays, but I think regardless, they come out here and send a message in the first half and possibly win the game as well.
To the NHL, a ton of movement ahead of Friday's trade deadline. The defending Stanley Cup champion Golden Knights made a huge splash with the addition of Noah Hannafin to their blue line. They also picked up Anthony Mantha from Washington. The Avalanche active as well, with Casey Middlestat coming over from Buffalo. Colorado also added defenseman Sean Walker from the Flyers. Finally, Vladimir Tarasenko heads to the President's Trophy leading Panthers, bringing more firepower to an already lethal top six forward group. So with that, we welcome in our hockey expert, Nick Martin. It's been a whirlwind couple of days. We still have a day left before the deadline, but which teams have won the deadline so far?
Yeah, the Avs were always likely to be a deadline winner. We had outlined this on Line Change just because they're the team that could most clearly benefit from bringing in some of these deadline rental options. So just the way that they've been already this good, not really having some clear flaws down the lineup, it was like much easier for them to bring someone in that would actually make a difference. And what they did was excellent, because I think Casey Middlestat was the best rental center on the market, and they got him to play as the second line center. And they gave up Bo Byram, who's really, really struggled badly this season. He's been a clear flaw on the back end. And then they're replacing that hole with Sean Walker. So you look at it, this can make the Avs way better. The market has responded. I posted yesterday, we tried to get it into Line Change that their 11-1 number was too long, and none of those hang around. So the market's already responded to that. But I think the Avs were the most clear winner. They were always kind of well situated, but what they did was almost better than expected. And then, yeah, the Knights, I think everyone's sick of it, but they were obviously a clear winner as well. They made two really good moves. I think that what they paid for both was actually pretty solid. Neither, like, from the Knights' perspective, I don't think they care about anything that they gave up, really. And Mantha, in the short term, is going to be a really good get for them, because they've been playing horrible lately. So they needed a winger to come in and shore things up right now. So whether or not he ends up being a huge factor in the playoffs remains to be seen. But the Knights have to get there too. So it's not like they could, if they keep playing at the level they're at right now, the playoffs are far from a lock. With that said, now with Hannafin and Mantha in the mix, you'd think they can pick things up. But that is a factor, and it's a bit of a factor in their cut price too, where I think they probably would be with some of these other teams if there wasn't like X percentage chance that they could go on the really bad run and miss out. I don't think that's happening now, but it's probably a little baked into the number.
Well, let's talk about that cut price for a second. So around 13-1 to win the Stanley Cup. And I know they are dealing with some injuries, namely Alec Martinez and Mark Stone. Does that give them some value right now?
Yeah, I think that the Knights, and I've put a lot of cup out rates out there this year, and I think it's at the point where there's so many teams that are so competitive. But if I had to pick one right now The Knights' best number out there is plus 1,400. I think that's the best number on the board. Um, I don't know if it's like an amazing number, but there's just so many teams that are so competitive now. All the other ones have kind of made their moves and have dropped accordingly. Like the Stars, the Panthers are as short as plus 600, which I think is way too short to play now. And some of these other teams are their prices have adjusted. So I think the Knights would be like the best price left on the board if you wanted something, but I don't know if it's like a insane get.
And as we mentioned, this thing is still not over. Who else do you think still needs to make a move?
Yeah, I think the two most logical teams, and people are discussing the possibility that Jake Gensel could go to Vancouver, which probably would need to involve trading Elias Lindholm, so it'd be complicated, and we'd see how that would actually work out. But I think the two that are most likely to make a move and are still most rumored to the big wingers left on the board are Carolina and the Rangers. And it's hard to say what Carolina is actually willing to do because their ownership group's been really stingy about paying for rentals and giving up assets. I think that they have the potential to be like a Colorado where what they could do would move their number significantly. And what's already on the roster makes them a true cup contender. So they're a team that I'm really watching. They're still out there at 13-1. They're one of the ones who could do something that actually I think drastically shortens their price to where you might want to play it. And then the Rangers, I think, are definitely going to remain in the mix for Jake Gensel or Buchnevich. They apparently would consider trading Gabe Perreault, which is the best prospect that I think any of the teams in these conversations can offer. So if that is true, they completely have what it takes to get Gensel or Buchnevich. Because I would, if I were the Blues, I'd be happy to get Gabe Perreault coming back and whatever other picks with that. So it is possible. The thing for me is I wonder if the Rangers are already too short at 10-1. Like I think 10-1 is basically their number for me if they got a Jake Gensel or Pavel Buchnevich in the top 6, because that is a clear need relative to the other top teams in the East. So yeah, I think those are kind of the two that are most likely to still make some big moves, but it's hard to say. Like even people are saying Vegas are still in on Gensel, which is crazy. And I think a lot of people would be really sick of this whole LTIR setup if that were to happen. But yeah, that kind of remains to be seen. They are working with a little less at this point than some of the other teams in terms of prospects left on the table.
I'm here in New York, so naturally I'm curious how aggressive the Rangers get, currently 5th in the league. But let's talk about tonight and get a best bet from you.
Yeah, so for tonight's games, and I'm gonna give a bit of a homer pick here on the Caps, but I do obviously know the team pretty well. And same thing with Pittsburgh. And I think I'm pretty reasonable in fading the Caps, when it's necessary and when it's right. I don't think it's right tonight. The Penguins have had a really hard time finding ways to pay off any win, even when they own much of the play. And if you look at the last 10 games, the Caps and the Pens underlying numbers are really comparable. So I'm not quite seeing this price. The Pens really haven't been able to turn their run of play into wins all season long. I think this matchup's going to set up to be a lot more coin flippy than this number suggests. And then the other thing I like for Washington, and I think this is getting baked into the price, like we talked about, they lost Anthony Mantha and they lost Joel Edmondson from the back end to the Leafs. But Edmondson in particular is not going to be a replacement value loss for the Caps. They have 7 NHL defenders on the roster. So you take one out, you plug a new one in, which will probably be Ethan Bear. You give some more minutes to Alexiev, who's actually playing better than Joel Edmondson. And it's not like there's a drop off there. So if that's part of the number here, I'm happy with things. And then Mantha had been one of the Caps' better wingers for sure, but they do have a lot of NHL wingers. Their issue is that they don't have any elite talent like a Sidney Crosby, like some of these other guys in the East. But they make up for that by having a ton of NHL level bodies. So it's not like those minutes are going to go to some completely worthless AHL guy. The guys are there to pick it up. So I think that kind of where the Caps are at with having already sold is getting cooked into this number a little too much. If it does move based off people overrating that, I would still buy. I don't know how the market's going to go for sure, but if it got to like plus 150 just off that because people thought Edmondson mattered, that would be even better. The only thing I'd keep my eye out, I'd say, is just, or recommend, is just keeping your eye out for this game because the Capitals could still move Nick Jensen today. He might sit then. That would move things a little. But the other thing is Pittsburgh has guys that could end up getting traded. And Drew O'Connor has actually been one of few competent wingers in their lineup to help support Crosby and Malkin. He might be sidelined with a concussion. So there's enough moving parts that I don't think it matters. I can't see how this price is this long. So yeah, I think it's the right time to try what's a pretty long undershot or underdog. So yeah, give me the Caps.
Well, I'm pretty sure the last time you came on this show, you gave an underdog money line bet, which hit. It was the Isles. I slacked you. Woo, go Nick. And you gave me responded just with a casual thumbs up, made me feel a little bit small, but it's okay.
It's a busy time of year.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But next time though, be like, yes, Maria, yes.
Okay, slack me
right.
tomorrow when the Caps grind this game out.
Okay. I'll be waiting for the response. Thank you.
Thank you.
Remember, any picks we give out here on the show, like the one you just heard from Nick, you can easily reference by following Green Dot Daily in the Action app. We keep track so you don't have to. That's going to do it for Green Dot Daily. I'm Maria Marino. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again Friday at 3 Eastern on the Action Network YouTube channel and the Action app.